Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Lowman02. We'll go through a couple Expo matches that I had today, non-competitive, three of which are against player Sugar Daddy of Wizardry on MTGO on his Reanimator deck, and the other three, or correction, the other two that we'll cover, so it'll only be five matches, will be with Michelle Wong as part of a one-on-one mano-a-mano gauntlet that we're currently running between 32, 16 of each player's decks right now. So we'll start off with the Sugar Daddy match, and just as some background, if you're not familiar with, if you don't currently play the CSM or you're watching for the first time, Sugar Daddy tends to play a deck that looks something like this right here that I'm opening up. Done a bit of work with him on the deck. Obviously, his creation. I think this is the current gyration of the deck he's running. And really, what it is a deck that seeks to get Emrakul in play through varied means, some of which are sneak attack through the breach, but its heart is really like a reanimator combo build that uses the instant speed reanimator effects like Corpse Dance to get that card to play. So that's what he's running for this. I think I'm running a deck that is fairly tuned to beat this sort of strategy. This is a deck I threw together actually today in about 20, 30 minutes. Really, the intent of it was is I had seen one player, I believe Sensei Rob, playing Eldrazi. I think he claimed that C and Rob, or correction, Rob Zadar actually initiated the build, but I kind of want to take it and figure out where it fit into 100 card. And what I came to the conclusion of is that I think it works best in a black-white base or Orzhov base Eldrazi deck. So this is the deck I'll be running. Keep in mind, I don't think this is highly tuned. I put it together relatively fast. I think there's a couple cards. Probably, I think in my heart I know it's probably 10 cards off. At least it's a minimum of 5 to 6 cards off right now. So I'm continuing to tune this build. And actually, the list I'm running doesn't even run Vindicate in the videos you'll see. So that's what I'll be running. That's what I'll be playing for these three games. And we managed to take them 3-0. But again, I don't think that's an indicator of this deck being phenomenal by any means. I think it's a tough matchup when I'm on as much discard as I am, and as many disruptive effects to what he's got going on. So we'll start game one. As you can see, we swept game one 2-0, and you'll see the second game we have quite the draw. So let's go over the keep real fast. We know he's in a 5-color reanimator deck. I look at this hand initially, and I've got 4 available mana, only one of my 2 colors. So initially, 3 of my 4 cards that are castable I can't even cast. But with Lennon Arbiter, I'm pretty comfortable that any fetch land he plays, I'm just going to be able to get. And I know his deck runs a lot of tutors, so anytime he tries to manipulate his library or look through his library, I'm able to get him. Now, I mean, what I need to be worried about on a draw like this is something like Sylvan Library or Miri's Guile. I don't think he runs it in this build. Or something like Bazaar of Baghdad that just essentially allows him to outfilter me through draw as opposed to tutor effects. So that's what I need to be worried about, but I keep it because I think it's strong enough on 7 that I don't want to go to 6. See him do nothing the first turn. We put out the Muted Vault, so if we want the option to attack due to discard or something like that, we have it. Play out the Lennon Arbiter, and we see the card that we were worried about. So when we see this, we figure, hey, we're probably, 5-0 at this point. I think going in, we're about 65 to 70% to win. But as soon as I see a card like that, plus Sylvan Library at the table, I figure, he's going to find the combo pieces he needs. At this point, we find the Expedition map, which is, I think we end up playing out. I think this turn we should have probably played out the Tangle Wire, but I think what our thinking is if he has it, he has it. We can't stop it at this point. There's going to be no way we can stop it. And this turn, if I'm not mistaken, we do play out the T-Wire correctly after playing out our Tidal Scholar to up the clock a little bit with a 2-2. And we do that by sacking the Crystal Vein, which does turn off the Expedition map option. So keep in mind, we do need to pay 2 for our own Lennon Arbiter. It's a parallel effect it's a universal effect for all players. So play out the Tangle Wire. He's taken significant damage just due to his fetching and due to us continually hitting him with a 2-2. I think he drew off of Sylvan. When T-Wire hits the board, he accidentally. So one play thing for Lennon Arbiter, it's an oddly written card. It probably should have been written as such that it triggers upon activation of a search effect. You have to pay for it prior to. So, for instance, if I were going to use my Expedition map, I would have to tap the 2 mana, activate the Lennon Arbiter, and then activate 2 additional mana to use my Expedition map. So, keep that in mind because a lot of people, if they haven't played against the card, don't know that. And sometimes it can lead to game sets like this where he has the 2 available mana and he goes to search, but it just doesn't happen because he hasn't paid it prior to, which is a game, if he had the ability to win, I'd hate to win that way, All right, so game 2. We have a quite ridiculous draw, if I remember in this game. I think it involves Mishra's Factory, or Correction Workshop. So keep in mind, and if you're a vintage player, some of this strategy probably looks pretty familiar to you. So, there is a white Eldrazi or white-black sometimes Eldrazi that uses Herbal to fix. Um, this deck is not even remotely as consistent as that, but a lot of the basis for the build on this deck was that deck, and really like stacks-based decks over Magic's history. As you see, this deck really does play out as a stacks deck. Strong keep, I think. We don't have the ability to fix for 2 of our spells. We only have the planes, but we do have the Ghost Quarter. So, at any point in time, the Mishra's Factory, our Correction Workshop becomes useless to us as we have enough mana or whatever. We can Ghost Quarter it, turn it into a swamp, and essentially have fixed our mana. Now, given when we pull the Thorn of Amethyst off the top, we're happy. We play out the Mind Stone. We get the additional mana we need to cast both on the first turn. And we know that this game is probably going nowhere for Sugar Daddy because we have a follow-up Thalia, which is just going to make everything he's doing, 2 more mana. Because most of his creatures require spells to get them into play. With Ghost Quarter, we're very happy as well. With the Aven Mind Sensor in hand, we're pretty sure it's going to hit. End up putting the Aven Mind Sensor down. Then we have a Lennon Arbiter, so, he could pay 2, but it's not likely to find the one Singleton Swamp in his deck. We end up cycling off the Mind Stone at this point, just trying to find more cards. We got this locked up. We end up playing the Basalt Monolith now, so if we do have any non-creature spells we want to play, which are very few and far between, we have the ability to do that. And as you can see, we just beat down with 2/2s and end up winning. We never even cast one of our Eldrazi, which is the namesake of the deck. Okie doke. So, game 2. We actually go 2-1 in this one. I believe we lose game 1. I think we get Emrakul down, or we get to a point where we know we're going to get Emrakul down. So we keep a 2-lander. We do have a Pristine Talisman plus a Basalt Monolith, so I think this is a decent keep. We end up playing out the Windswept Heath. I figure he probably has a means of discard in hand. So I go ahead and pop my fetch and Journey to Nowhere his card. Now I see Phyrexian Arena afterwards. And I think at this point in time, I gotta race. I gotta have my Porcelain Legionnaire plus his Ancient Tomb do some work for me. So I end up playing out the Thorn of Amethyst, so I can hopefully slow him down enough that as opposed to a 5-turn clock, he's forced to use some of his Ancient Tomb, etc., to put this down to really like a 3-turn clock. We see a Notion Thief come out. Cool. When we get Wastelanded, we're pretty sure at this point we're losing, so we're actually mana screwed. This deck runs a lot of lands. I think it's at like 40 or 39. It's got a lot, because a lot of them don't, and being fair, a lot of them are not typical lands. You have stuff like Tabernacle or Pendrell Vale, stuff like that, which, is a land, but it's really not. It does pitch to Mox Diamond, so I guess it could turn into a land. But we have a lot of land in this deck, so I don't think we were unfavored to draw land. I don't think the keep was extremely greedy on 2. But, it could be wrong. I mean, I haven't had a lot of playtesting with this deck, and I did build it relatively quickly this morning, so relatively new deck to me. We see the Emrakul come down, and, we know if he Tainted Pacted for it, it's going to hit the board, so we call it good and wrap it up at that point. Okay, so game 2. All right, very strong keep. So, we see a Loreston Hole, which means that any attrition-based stuff he's going to do, is not going to work. We're glad to see him discard it, and I think he has to, because if that thing comes down turn 3, it's going to be very difficult for him. Now, this game is odd because it ends up playing out like a mid-range game. So I Swords to Plowshares this thing, thinking, hey, like, he doesn't run a lot of small, low-flying threats. He normally has to win through his combo. But then I see a Tarmogoyf come down, and I'm like, whoa, that's a big card. We end up taking the Lodestone Golem out of the graveyard, taking the Tarmogoyf down by 2 power, 2 toughness. We intend on doing the same thing again. We're just going to run it back because that allows us to leave up Hallowed Moonlight and also shrink the Goyf down to 3/4. Here we see a Knight of the Reliquary come out, and we're thinking at this point, hey, we're probably going to lose, but it's I fully expect to lose from this point. But at this point, like most of my removal, 1-for-1 removal that I would typically play in like a mid-range matchup has come out of the deck because this is not a matchup that I expect it to be useful. Like cards like Path to Exile are just not very good. Now we actually saw a misplay here by Sugar Daddy. He attacks it with the Goyf. We block. Golem and Goyf die. He fetches a land with his Knight of the Reliquary, and then ends up demonic intent or diabolic intent, cast diabolic intent, using that as a sacrifice outlet to get the 3/1 Notion Thief, which I think is a huge misplay. I think you just leave the Knight in play, and eventually your Dark Depths combo, or it'll just get so big that it kills me. This deck has a harder time dealing with a large 3-drop than it does with dealing with reanimation effects in a lot of ways. As you see, we get down our Thalia, we get down our Withered Wayfarer, which does a lot of work for us. So I just recently wrote in forum on this card. There you see the Dark Depths. If he had kept the Knight around, it probably would have killed me by now because it would have gotten so large. But if it hadn't, Dark Depths in play, that's one combo piece you need. Now I end up killing it, which may seem a little premature, but if he plays a Thespian stage, and I already have the Wasteland in play, or I put the Wasteland in play, then I just don't want to take the risk with it. It makes me more nervous. As you'll see, we have a lot of LD in the deck, so he's gone down from like 7 mana to 4 at this point. And really, it's pretty much game over. So we end up getting the Carax, which is a great card against him. So if he does reanimate something, if he just manages to get that Crystal Brand or something off, then we can win. And we journey to nowhere, the Academy Rector, because we don't want to see Omniscience hit play. We block this 11-12, which, if this card had stayed in play, would have killed us a long time ago. Attack in for 4, play the Porcelain Legionnaire. And this is a bit of an all-in play, but I want to force him to have it. His deck doesn't run a lot of removal, unless it's like mass removal. Like I think he runs a Toxic Deluge, which we've already seen, a Firestorm, and then the Nahiri's Wrath. And I believe he runs one Swords to Plowshares. But if we look at his graveyard at this point, we've already gotten the Toxic Deluge out of his hand. He's down to 4. We know he's cast Dark Deal. I think if he had the removal, he would have cast it during the turn that we played in the Aven Mind Sensor, or when we got the Alpha Strike in for 4 damage to put him to lethal the following turn. And really any land off the top at this point, would have put us in Triskelion range. So I think the play was defensible to end up alpha striking with the 2/2/1s, the Flyer and the Thalia. But really, this wasn't the ideal play. I didn't want to play the Porcelain Legionnaire. What I wanted to do is sack the land off the top, play the Trike, and then have that available to close out the game. So let's go to the next one. So we win that one. I don't think we should have, if that's any consolation. I think we should have lost that match quite handily. This ends up being, I believe, quite the Ralph Stomp. We have a lot of land destruction capability in hand. And as you see, we sack a Lodestone off the top and just go ham and end up playing it out the first turn so we can start pressuring him to a large extent. And we attack in, force him to block, and then activate his Hermit Druid. As you can see, one of the things I talked about in one of the games I lost against Sugar Daddy, actually in competition, is sometimes you just hit the Emrakul and your graveyard goes away, which it does here. Afterwards, we get rid of the Hermit Druid, and we end up hitting one of his lands with the Ghost Quarter, because we already know the basic has come out of his deck. We Wasteland after that, so we're still at 2 land, but he's at 2 land, and he only has one of his colors he needs out of 5. Thalia gets dropped on the 5th turn of our game, and we got him down to 1, and that's really game at this point. We play on a Mindstone, so in case we draw land, we can cast the Steel Hellkite, but we don't really need it to win. And we do find Braid's Cabal, but before we even get it resolved on the board, he goes in and concedes. So you really see the stacks effect of this deck. Just go into work against a 5-color deck here. It's a little more fragile to it. So Raffle Stomp game 1, Raffle Stomp game 3, and then I think, realistically, I think game 2 could have been won by the opponent, but I think in a lot of ways he was thinking of the game along the same lines I was. So I had sideboarded down a lot of my mid-range cards, like my Go for the Throats, my ousts, stuff like that, like very cheap removal that's good against a good mid-range threat, like a 3/4 drop. But his deck played out that way, and I think what got both. Well, it probably should have killed me, but I was kind of shocked by it because I wasn't ready for it. But I think what may have gotten him is that he was still playing in a way that he would if he were playing, you know, like strict reanimator, which is what that deck's bread and butter is. It really doesn't play mid range. So last game with Sugar Daddy, we end up dumping the first. We keep this hand right here. It's got great mana. It doesn't really have much else going for it, but the deck runs a lot of threats. Now we see Dust Bowl, and this is a great game because you'll see that this deck can definitely do some work with a Dust Bowl, and I think you see Dust Bowl kill 5 or 6 lands this game. So we get the first one. We know we're gonna lose. We know we're gonna lose our City of Traders regardless. Get our second one there, and we draw a great drop with land tax. End up playing it out. So we know if he ever gets ahead of us on lands, we're just going to be able to keep on doing this to him because he only has 1 basic in the whole deck. As you see, we land down for a while, but we're cool with this because with Dust Bowl, it's not a big deal. We can just sit here and trade lands forever. We get a Thorn of Amethyst down and continue to just Dust Bowl away because we don't need a lot of mana to work. We turn off his Noble Hire with our Revoker. At this point, he doesn't get a Bazaar down. We end up getting the Bazaar with the Dust Bowl because it doesn't produce mana, but I just don't want to get mised by, like, you know, Goryo's Vengeance and just lose the game randomly. And if I'm not mistaken, we didn't put anything relevant in the graveyard. He put like 2 walkers, 2 planeswalkers and a scroll rack in the graveyard. And finally, he does get up and lands. Now he brings a significant amount of lands, so I mean, I figure he's going to continue to hit land drops, but I don't think he'll be able to fix with it. As you can see, we keep on Dust Bowling. We're going to Dust Bowl every turn. Now we're out of basics in our deck at this point in time, which makes land tax a little more questionable. I mean, I think the mana ratio probably needs to be relooked by me. I forget if I have. I think I may have like taken a few non-basics out at this point, but you know, I did hit a few basics earlier than I wanted to. I think this deck runs 6. You know, 7 or 8 may be better, especially with running a card like land tax. But as you can see, I mean, Dust Bowl it does work. It just does a lot of work, and eventually he has to give it up because he just doesn't have really a hope of winning or casting his spells around it. Okay, and actually I do not remember this game. I remember the Dust Bowl game very well. All right, so we have a Containment Priest hand. I believe this is actually a Nahiri game, if I'm not mistaken. I believe she comes into play on his side for this one. So we play out our 2/2 Mishra's Factory. Yeah, Nahiri comes in. We see a discard, and he attacks in. I don't know if that's a mistake or not. It allows me to, you know, essentially get rid of the Nahiri or force his hand with the Nahiri. We attack it in, and we know if he wants to exile the Nahiri, or if he wants to exile or get rid of the Containment Priest, which is a very bad card for him to see, then he's going to have to get rid of Nahiri. As you can see, you know, Mox Opal, even in this deck, can do busted things. Oh, this is an Armageddon game. So we get out the Lodestone Golem, making everything more expensive. Whatever he got with his tutor, evidently he was just out of range of doing. You know what? I remember now what it was. You know what I was thinking. You know, I end up playing the Lodestone out there as opposed to, like, you know, the 9 power off the Precursor Golem because I figure in my head he's got a Through the Breach in hand and or he either has an Emrakul in hand or he has a Through the Breach in hand and he had to go find Emrakul with the tutor. By doing this, we keep him off drawing 1 mana and casting Through the Breach. So we play the Lodestone to ensure that the first time around, and then once we draw the Geddon, we figure the game is over at that point. Unless he has like 1-for-1 removal, you know, he can't win from that point. And if he does have the 1-for-1 removal, I'll take my chances with an active Relic of Progenitus in play. You know, as well as I honestly the same land count but a lower curve that I can still win this game. So that was the end of the three match set that Sugar Daddy and I played. And then we'll go over 2 more with Michelle Wong that involve a variety of decks in part of what I'm calling the 100-card Singleton Rodeo. It's a mono-a-mono or one-on-one gauntlet. We're both testing out 16 of our decks, so 32 total decks. This first one, I believe, is Junk Aggro on Abzan Wolf Run. So she's running a 4-color blood deck. I'm running a 3-color aggro deck. I don't think this is one of my better decks. It's fine though, and as you see, like in this first game, it's able to really get some good early beats in. I think the mana base is strong. We see a Cultivate here, which is cool with us. So you know, we get a token off our Voice of Resurgence, which I'm fine with. You know, this deck doesn't really need its lands like a lot of decks do. And we have an Knight of the Reliquary in play, so I mean we can make up for it and find better lands or whatever lands we may need with 2 lands that are. So we get face feathered here. We sack our land. The UI just straight up breaks for night. I don't know why. It didn't happen in other games, but my library just didn't pop up, so I had to click through it. But it's whatever. At this point, we have so much going on the board, and I know she's not playing a Wrath of God deck that the game's over. She's essentially -12 with the Death Right in play. Second game's a little more interactive. I think one of the interesting things is when you start looking at this, and like why I'll always preach that it's good to get outside your comfort zone a bit. Is Michelle in a lot of ways plays like a control player plays, which is not a bad thing. Like she plays very well. Like I don't want you to take it that way, but when you tend to play towards a certain play style, the manner of your play when you jump into, let's say, a mid-range strategy becomes a little bit more transparent to someone who understands and knows your play style. To some folks, it may be confusing. Let's see if I can highlight a certain play. But obviously the community is relatively small. We all play each other on a decently regular basis, and you tend to acquire an understanding of how someone will play. I think the individual that I'm probably most akin to or I know how they play very specifically is Sugar Daddy. Um, and Suge, if I were to be honest, I think sometimes you play a little too much to lose. Or you play not to lose as opposed to win sometimes. And that's not a ding on you. I mean, in some formats, that's a good thing. Specifically, actually, Vintage. I think Vintage is a much more denial or prevention based strategy as opposed to a win time now strategy, a go all in strategy. But I think in this format, this is more of like a legacy or like modern style kind of plays more that way. I think I guess to go back to my original point, that's just for you, Sugar. I think to go back to my original point, I think, when you typically compete with a certain style of deck or you typically tend to play a certain style of deck, your manner of play molds to it. And then sometimes it limits your range. So, one thing you'll see throughout all these gauntlet matches, and it's one reason why I will always change up decks because I don't want to get accustomed to a certain style of deck because I myself tend to enjoy control or combo control most of all the decks. We'll tend to switch it up because, I think you got to jump out of your comfort zone because it allows you to develop your play and really understand, tempo in a way that, you can shift the way you play or the way you make decisions based upon your understanding, not only of the deck, but of how the deck needs to be played in that time and place. So sorry for the heady and didactic conversation about that, but I just thought it was an interesting note as we were playing these. It was interesting to me how you see like someone who's habitually a control player playing like a mid-range based deck and how maybe they do that different than you would expect, kind of based upon how you see their hands play out. So game two, we end up losing this one, and I can't remember. I mean, probably because we're playing cards like Watch Wolf in our deck. But Watch Wolf's fine. It's a 3/3 for 2 mana. I mean, we just built this deck, to make an aggro jump deck because I tend to enjoy these colors. We see Sigarda. That's really not good for us. Anything that flies is generally not too good. But we are up on life. We're kind of advantaged there. We see an STP. That is not good. Why she let it get pumped, I don't know. But, okie doke. So we lose our Elspeth, We're a little disappointed. We managed to get in for 5 more, though. We get the Siege Drain her down to a few less life. She gains some more off. What does she gain it off of? Oh, off the Death Right. And then here, I forget what you guys. I think it's a Primeval Titan off of Green Sun Zenith, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry if the game's kind of run together. There's a lot of them to remember. Yeah, so it's a Prime Time, and she gets the DD combo, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So she's got the Dark Depths combo. We know we're in trouble here. So we play out the Shriek Maw, kill the Titan. We figure that's going to get in for at least a turn, or at least let us go wider than she's going. So with the Mortify, we can get one of her creatures and hopefully crank her out real fast. She double blocks there, which is intelligent. I think we had to do that. Now we see a Johnny. We know the game's kind of over. We do have the Zealous Persecution. So if we want to snipe the Death Shaman, if she blocks with it, we can. But Yeah, we're pretty much done here. Yeah, there's no way we can win this one. She's got a couple too many Death Shaman activations. We see that, and we sack one just to see what's on top of the deck. Sea of Vertigo's Gearhulk, which is a great card, but it's not going to win us the game from this position. Really, what we needed was like, I don't even know, with these lands, we'd have to attack in, hope she blocked, and then like cast one of the 3/1 sack creatures. But I don't think either of those are in this deck, and there's really not a lot of cards that get it outside of like Swords to Plowshares. So, you know, we're just doing that for lulls, just to see see what the next creature was. Okay, so on to game 3. This match. And this one's a fine hand. So I mean, we have Elf of Deep Shadow, which this deck does not run a lot of 1-mana ramp. It runs this one specifically because it kind of fixes for it. I think it runs Noble Hierarch as well. We cast a Self-Inflicted Wound out of the board. She passed her own creature. I don't know. Maybe that's right. I mean, it tells me a lot about her hand. It lets me know she must not have a lot of land in it. It's a very powerful removal spell. But I think later on, it's interesting to know. I mean, I'm not sure what later on she would have gotten out of that, or if she would have been able to. She would have gotten Pelucranos, I suppose, here. We attack in, just kind of hedge bet. If she does double block it, we can sell us Persecution and just blow her out on her cards. Play out the kitchen things. Now, I think that's an interesting play because I could have ramped myself with the Birds of Paradise. Really, it'd be more like hitting my land drops. I didn't hit a land this turn. But really, like, a 3/2 is about as good as this deck gets. When I see the Whisper and Wildwood draw, I'm like, maybe I should have. And here we do. So we end up kind of correcting ourselves with this Whisper and Wildwood. But this deck tops out at 5. It's got like 2 or 3 5 drops. There's no 6 drops in it. It's just a very aggressive, low curve deck. We see a Banefire. I mean, we figured it was a Wrath, to be honest. I didn't think she was on Wrath in this deck, but we figured it was a Wrath, so we block it. We drop the Whispering Wildwood the next turn, and the Whispering, what is this thing called? Woodland Whisper or something like that? Whisperwood Elemental. When she starts making a crap ton of tokens, really wins the game all by itself. It's an army in a can over time. And she's used unfortunately, she's used all of her removal on other stuff, and it just takes over the game. We just beat her to death with it. You'll see we end up flipping our critters, our Tide Hollow during main. It's because I had no intention of casting the Reclamation Sage, and I figured if I flip it on my main, if she casts some random card like Comeuppance or something, I don't have to worry about responding to it. So you want your creatures to be face up with this card because anytime creatures that are face up are destroyed and you've sacrificed the Whisperwood Elemental, it manifests that many cards off the top, which will just give me another army of 2/2s and allow me to beat it and kill her. So this is really like a wrath-proofing card, if you will, against decks that run that kind of stuff. But I don't think she was. So we ended up taking this game 2-1, but our first victory over Michelle. And then we played one more EXPO match, but I won't show that. It was a red deck wins on Rexer, just kind of for testing purposes. The last match here is my Allurin Elfball. And let me jump back real quick. Sorry if we're jumping around too much. I'll show you my the aggro deck we ran there, the junk aggro deck. This is it right here. So like I said, it tops off at 5. It's just a very aggressive, good, some of the best removal in the game. I call it aggro. It's more probably a mid-range deck. It's somewhere between the sliding scale of aggro and mid-range. Probably more on the side of mid-range, but because it's capped at like 5, it's not you don't see any like Primeval Titan in here. It's not really a broken deck. It's a pretty fair deck, but it's definitely fun and it's good. It does pretty well. It'll beat mono red all day long just because of the life gain in it and the early threats that can attack and block in it. So that was the deck we were just playing. We were playing relatively fair deck on her side, which was basically a deck similar to this, probably a little higher curve, and with red splashed into it. So just, a decent mid-range beating deck or beatdown deck. We're playing next as Allurin Elfball, which, so if you're not familiar, like Allurin right here, legacy, well, I would say a legacy staple. It is a legacy archetype. Deck, and let me pull out the window real fast. And if you can read this right now, you can probably tell why. I mean, it just says you can play any 3-drop creature without paying its mana cost, as if it had flash. That's essentially in this deck what it plays out as is a 4-mana Omniscience. So You know, and then we have cards like Cloudstone Curio. So if you're not familiar with how Cloudstone Curio and Alluring work, if you draw, you know, there's a couple cards in here that will do it for you. But if you draw like Multani's Acolyte, and I think there is one more. I can't. Yeah, Elvis Visionary, and there may be like one or two more. But these guys right here with these cards and like one other elf is an infinite combo that allows you to draw your deck. Which if you are able to draw your entire deck, yeah, actually there's a third right here, Coiling Oracle. Once you get to Coiling Oracle, you'll play this one every time because it puts lands off the top into play. Which means that you'll be able to get to as much mana as left in your deck, plus all of the cards in your deck with this combo. And this deck wins off of Craterhoof Behemoth, and or just good old-fashioned elf beats. But you know, once you get this combo in play, you'll draw every card. You'll eventually get enough land for the Craterhoof, um, and you'll also have enough creatures, even if they don't have haste, that this thing will be over 20 power, and you'll just win the game. Otherwise, it's really just a good old fashioned elf deck. You know, it runs all of the critter tutors you can find to find this guy. It has the only thing it runs Genesis Wave, it runs Cord, it runs Green Sun Zenith. It runs the Garrick just so you can put out the Craterhoof easier, or you can just draw tons of cards. It's kind of like Wrath proofing plus an early Craterhoof if you happen to just randomly draw into them. Not a lot of 4-drops. You have like the Natural Order package to find your Craterhoof or your Primeval Titan. Because really, at the end of the day, we're kind of explaining how we win. But what this deck circulates around is this right here: is this guy and this guy. This is a very creature-based deck. As you can see, there's 56. I think it is the highest creature count deck that I run with the lowest land count. You can see 28 lands. Not a lot, but it has all of these crappy little elves. Most of them can make mana, and really this deck can get there. This deck can oftentimes be on like 10 to 12 mana by turn 3 or 4 or 5, and you want your draw to be as pure as possible. Like typically you don't want to pull lands at the top. Like the ideal starting hand for this deck is like 1 or 2 lands. 2 lands is probably fine. 2 lands is probably best, and you can generally expect 2 lands and 7 cards. So I think it's a very strong deck, but it's a glass cannon. We kind of know it. And going in, we're gonna play Michelle on. We're gonna play Michelle on. Come on, Moto. We're gonna play Michelle on Jeskai Control, Jeskai Planeswalker Control. So she has like such one-time hits as Forked Bolt in this deck, which I'm not happy to see. Wrath of God, Supreme Verdict. Lots of like lower damage, efficient burn spells. So I'm kind of, I'm pretty much accepting that this is going to be similar to the EXPO match I ran with her before, where I was on Suicide Black or Aggro Black on Azorius, which I figured was going to be a raffle snuff. I kind of figured this is going to be as well. But as you'll see, like I think maybe she built the deck hastily, or she kept some sketchier keeps because her mana just doesn't get there this game. So, let's go over this keep real fast. So, we have 2 land, which I said is generally ideal, Fin Horde Elves, and then we have, a decent number of elves. Like, so we can go low to the ground with the elf package, Elvish Champion package, or if we happen to hit some of our prime mana cards or primo mana cards, we have a Craterhoof Behemoth and a Garrick Relentless, or Garrick Hall of Beast, which can put the Craterhoof into play. So we're very happy with this hand. We figure it's as good as it's going to get pre-board, so we play it. She puts her second land down, which I'm fine to see. I play out my Wirewood Hive Master, end up getting a bug token off of it, and have a 2/3 and play in the Sky Shroud Elite. She ships it back with no land drop, and I figure in my head this is going to be a stomping. She does Force of Will, our Elvis Champion, which is going to limit us a little bit. Draw Cloudstone Curio. It's fine. We don't have the other combo piece. Typically, you want to draw the other combo piece first, then go find that thing. We end up Green Sun Zenith. I think a couple of options here. We could have made our elves bigger, but what I go for is just drawing more cards because she's mana screwed. I figure I want to close this game out as fast as possible and figure out a way to make as much mana or the amount of mana I need. And yeah, here we end up putting the Garrick down, dropping the hoof, and put it in -76, if I'm not mistaken, which is a pretty good beating. And would have drawn a whole slew of cards if the stack would have resolved. So that's game one. We just got lucky. She got mana screwed. It was kind of eh. The second game is a very weird game. So remember, we play 28 lands. She probably plays somewhere around 40. I'd have to check the deck list. We don't have a good keep, or we don't have good keeps to start. Figure we're going to be at 6 because we're dropping into 5, but we're on the draw. Play the expedition map. So we know we've got Gaia's Cradle of Beck and Call. Play out the priest. Have to pay 1/4 with Tabernacle. I don't think Tabernacle of Note is that great against this deck. I think a lot of times Tabernacle acts like Kataki acts against Witchlarian Academy in the decks where you would ostensibly think it's good. If Tabernacle or Pendrell Vale was pay 2, then I'd be in a lot of trouble. We do sack off the Scrapper to get her Boros Signet. Carpet of Flowers is like almost nothing this game except annoying me. I accidentally sack off my elf there. I think actually I probably would have won if I had not. It was an accident, so I just finished clicking too much and then I misclicked and dumped it into the bin on the Tabernacle. We play out the Tree Speaker, ramp it up, and then just start attacking with it because we figure if she's doing nothing, she's on 1 mana and doing nothing, we might as well play it out. She has Force of Will again, and she ends up Force of Willing my 3/4, which I'm fine with. I mean, that's a fair exchange. She's not playing lands. I know she's had to draw on something that can deal with threats I play. So your Reclamation Sage. I believe the Reclamation Sage actually gets an Azorius Signet. Yeah. So it's funny. You'll see you'll see the chat bar at the bottom. Some of the banter we're having is our opinions on the signets and artifact and mana and ramp and 100 card Singleton. I don't think it's per se bad, but I think there's a lot of hate out there for it. And when you're playing a mono green deck, of course I'm going to be able to hate artifacts now. That's one of the things that green does. It has that ability. So yeah, we save all of our creatures. End up drawing that guy. So we're in a 28 land deck. She's likely on a 40 land deck. She intelligently kills that thing because if that thing flips, then she's gonna be in trouble. I'm gonna draw a lot more cards and probably win. As you see, we don't end up winning this. It's actually kind of odd. She does turn the corner at the last minute on us. Yeah, we draw Death Right. Yeah, so kind of going back, I do, at this point, I'm pretty sure actually that like misclick or a click through or whatever you want to call it or misplay on the Tabernacle of Pendrell Vale actually costs the game because I think we end up getting stuck in this game at 1 life, or correction, she gets stuck at 3 life, near the end, and we end up having some crazy top decks. She does as well, but up until that point, we're just drawing all mana. We're boating out on mana right now. So she's on like a 40 land deck. She's able to land 3 that actually do something, and then I'm on 8 lands right now with 78 in deck. As you can see, I mean, that's kind of an attachment to like this deck's ability to find land. It can just get land and play. Now, I find a little bit too much here. I start just top decking lands and breaking off. See, I Idyllic Tutor for Detention Sphere, which I don't know why she would get that. With the Idyllic Tutor, I think Humility is the better call. Find the Crater Hoof. Unfortunately, she has an STP in hand, and we lose the hoof. I guess we gain some life as a consolation prize. Listen, fine draw. I think she has another answer for this. Actually, I know she does have an answer for this, because if this thing stays on the board, I'm probably going to win. Yeah, Flame Tongue Kavu. Draw Jiraga, which is going to be a 4/4 after we pump it. And I'm wondering in my head, hey guys, where were you earlier? But that's the game. Sometimes you draw the cards you need, sometimes you don't. Draw Quarter Calling, so we're just drawing great now. I mean, we're pulling them off the top. If we had one of these few cards, 2 to 3 turns prior to when we drawn them now, probably would have had a lot more effects. Look at the prime time. We really can't find much here. We just find Cavernous Souls and then a Dryad Arbor just to get more attackers. I think she Wrath of Gods again. Yeah, Day of Judgment. Plays out her Ajutai to find an additional card. We find another great draw on Fauna Shaman. So if we draw any creature, we can go for what we need to go for. But really at this point, there's not much we can do. We play this out for the lulz. So we play the Reverend Silence to blow up our own Carpet of Flowers. Because we're just, we know we've lost this point. I think what you'll see happen is she ends up playing a Jace the Mind Sculptor. I think we concede pretty shortly after. We're just like, yeah, you got us. Draw a land and then concede it. So on to game 3. So as you can see, 2 odd games, complete mana screw in both games on her part, and then a little bit of flood on my part, and just a complete stomping the first game. All right, so This hand is very, very strong. We'll play it out here in a second, but if you look at it, we have Birchler Rangers plus a Rufellos, plus a Wirewood Hive Master, which is going to make tons of little dudes, plus a Wood Elf, plus a Fierce Empath. The Fierce Empath is going to find for me really one of four cards are available in the deck. I have sideboarded in my Gaia's Revenge. I'm not a huge fan of the card, but I think against her it's fine because I mean it's essentially shroud to her. Well, it's shrouded to her because she doesn't play green, and it's an 8/5 haste, so just gonna beat her face in. I put that card in more so, because I know I can more so not to find or tutor for, but to cast it if I just randomly draw into it, or if I, get to a point where 8 is enough and I don't have other threats on the board, like post Wrath of God. Really, what the Fierce Amphath's going to go for is the Crater Hoof. So I know I'm going to have just tons of mana. So I'm going to be making a bunch of 1/1s that are going to make the Hoof better. I'm going to have, at least by the turn I'm casting the Fierce Empath 3, 2 to 3 Forest. But I expect I can get to 3 Forest off the Wood Elves, which makes 6 mana total with Raphellos, plus the Birchlore Rangers, which is going to it's going to put me up to 8. Which in my head I'm thinking that's going to give me about three to four attackers with the hoof, which is way more than enough with a total of 8 to 10 creatures on the board. So this is a strong keep, I think, and I'm happy to see it because I figure if she stumbles at all and can't deal with it, I'm glad to see a Terramorphic Expanse. Then she's just going to be in trouble. Terramorphic Expanse is fine with me. Yeah, it's a fetch land. Yeah, it'll fix her mana, but it's too darn slow. Play the Wood Elves, get another Forest in there. I could have gone for a Tropical. I don't because I don't want to get Wastelanded. I want all my land. Play out the Hive Master. I probably did that completely backwards. Yeah, I should have an additional 1/1 in play. So I misplayed that. I think I only have 2 critters when I end up going in. Yeah, so we have we have a little diatribe here, and part of the reason I actually put this video together tonight, even though it's really late, is because I promised Michelle, because I F6 through this attack step, I promised her I would reveal the hand, because we were bantering a bit, and we were basically saying, hey, good night, good games, and then she realized, hey, I could find Force of Will off Dak Faden and stop the Crater Hoof. Not that that would mean she won per se, because I mean I could still attack to death the Dak Faden. Um, but I told her, hey, I've got a guttural response. So you can see my hand. I got a guttural response, which essentially means if she does try to force a will, my Crater Hoof while she's tapped out, I'll tap the 2 remaining elves, cast the guttural response, counter the force of will, resolve the Crater Hoof Behemoth. I'll lose 16 power and attackers by doing that. But I'm pretty sure if I hit her DAC for 12 and destroy it, I'm still pretty advantaged because I do have a worldly tutor in hand as well, which during upkeep the following turn, if I haven't been completely Wrath of God and blown out, um, with her only drawing 1, I'll probably be able to get there because right now she's short a white source. Um, I don't know why she's playing Ruination either. I just noticed that in her graveyard. Oddly enough, I was just kind of looking in there to see if she dropped a white source with that. She's at least short 1 white source for any of the wraths that come immediately to mind. And without the deck, she's going to have to draw that and or the Wrath of God effect off the top of her deck, depending on what her holdings were. So I think we're favored either way. And obviously the gutter response, we know that Force of Will is just not going to do it here. So good games to Michelle and to Sugar Daddy. I hope you enjoyed the Expo matches that we ran this evening. And if you're curious about in the decks, let me know. Relatively short look at each of the decks, but I don't think a lot of folks read or watch the deck text. So I hope you enjoyed the gameplay. And if you're interested, this format again is 100 card Singleton. It's played competitively every weekend on Saturday at 15:30 or 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the continental United States. Hosted religiously by ML Berlin. And if you are interested in playing this format, you can jump onto gatherling.com. Again, gatherling.com. Register there to play. Great group of folks. Awesome format. And in my opinion, a lot of it, it plays out like Cube. So if you're a big Cube aficionado, like I am, I think it's the cubing season. This is a format for you. And you're not going to have, power cards in it. It's a little more fair than that, but I think it's a great format, and I think in a lot of ways it's what's best about Magic. Because when you play these games, a lot of times I think it increases your ability to construct and evaluate cards and decks. Which in a lot of ways is going to benefit you in both constructed play, whether that be a 4 of 60 card format or a 100 card format. But I also think it benefits you in your wider range, your wider knowledge of cards and their effects and what they can do to games. And I think that's a skill set, that evaluation is really what I'm getting after, is a skill set that benefits you a lot in limited play. Which, if I had my way, I would always be drafting cube. If that was the only form of magic, that's the one I would choose. But, this one is great, great group of folks, and I hope to see you out there if you decide to join in. All right, take care.